If you want to become a better climber, but you live in an area of pretty flat land like I do in the New Forest in England, how do you go about it? How can you become better at climbing if you haven't got big hills to climb? If you're going to the Alps or somewhere like that, you could be climbing for an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on your abilities. So being able to develop that climbing strength is really important. But like I said, how can you do it if the biggest hill near you is something like that? That's one of the biggest lumps around where I ride quite often, and it's probably about half a kilometre long, maybe a kilometre if you really push it, and it takes about 5 minutes or so to get up, maybe less than that if you're doing well and taking advantage of the descent before. So in this video we're going to be looking at things you can do to become a better climber. The first thing you can do, of course, is hill repeats. So if you have got a hill like that, however big it is, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you can do that on repeat and maybe try to build up half an hour's climbing in an hour to get that practice and gradually extend the length of time you climb for. So generally, if you're climbing, a good climbing pace would probably be around high tempo or sweet spot, something around 90% of your FTP, or something obviously you can do for sustained periods. So the best thing you need to do is practice that. So if you're doing a climb like this one I'm on now, you want to get into that rhythm of climbing that you'd think you do on that bigger hill. And here we're not trying to necessarily boost our VO2 max and really push up the hill. We're trying to develop muscular endurance for those long alpine climbs when, like I said, you could be climbing for an hour or more. And once you get to the top, roll down and do it again. But keep it steady the whole way. Another thing you can do is practice riding at that sort of power even on the flat. So if you've got a flat stretch like I've got coming up now, you get into a big gear and you get up to that power and try to maintain that power. And if you've got a headwind, so much the better, because that really helps you push against something as you're trying to maintain that power. And obviously when you climb, you often climb at a lower cadence than you do when you're on the flat. So trying to ride at a lower cadence, for me maybe that's around 75 to 80, trying to keep that as my cadence as I try to maintain that same sweet spot power, about 90% of FTP. And I could do that for maybe 10, 20 minutes, have a good rest, and then maybe try it again. And the more you develop that, the stronger you'll be on those big alpine climbs. If you're finding this video useful, the best thing you can do is watch it to the end to indicate to YouTube and the algorithm that you're enjoying it. Another thing you could do is more VO2 efforts, as in 5 minutes or so above threshold, trying to develop that power, because it will all help when you start climbing. No climb's ever the same. You don't get perfect gradient the whole way up. There's always going to be ramps that you need to up your power on and go over threshold a bit. So developing that VO2 capability, maybe riding at 110% of threshold, is another good exercise to do. And similar to that are over and unders. And over and unders develop that lactate clearance from your body. It's the lactate that gives your legs that heavy feeling and is the limiting factor on how fast and hard you can climb. So over and unders are maybe starting out with something like 6 to 8 minutes long, building up to 10, 12, 15, even 20 minutes when you're just going above your threshold, just going below it. And for me, I find the easiest way to do those is on the turbo, on the trainer. It's so much easier to gauge that effort and maintain that for 10 or 12 minutes when you're riding on a trainer than when you're trying to do it on the road, or at least I find it like that anyway. I'm sure lots of people, if they're good at training, can hold their power pretty well on the flat themselves. So make sure you check out over and unders. And as I said, your cadence generally is going to be slower climbing than it is on the flat. So try practicing getting in a bigger gear and really putting that muscular effort in. And it's got to be said that for climbing, you can't really beat training on the trainer if you live in flatland. It's so easy to set a trainer up to replicate climbing. You can just raise your front wheel to give you that impression of climbing, because when you are climbing, you are sat in a slightly different position, and nothing is going to prepare you for that other than really doing it. And when you're in that different position, you do tend to use different muscles or muscles in a slightly different way. So by using a trainer, you can make sure your bike is set up at the right angle for climbing. And then of course, using a program, you can make sure you set your target power, and you can ride at that as long as you can and do intervals and efforts at that sort of power. And obviously nowadays, with things like Rouvy, you can pick any climb pretty much anywhere in the world and practice it. So if you know you're going to be climbing Mont Ventoux and you want to go and do the triple challenge of Mont Ventoux and get that badge, what better way to practice than doing it on Rouvy and actually climbing those roads? Well, hopefully, as you can see, there's a lot you can do to practice climbing, even if you live in flat areas. If you do anything else that I haven't mentioned, don't forget to drop it in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful, and until next time, bye for now.